Okay. I'm starting Mem Aleph on mid base. So it's Tanur Rabban right after the Mishnah, right? Are we right after the Mishnah?
The Gemara, starting the Gemara.
Let me turn this on. Tell me again?
Yeah, we're starting with the Gemara.
The Gemara right after the Mishnah. Okay.
Right.
So we're talking about
How does that work?
we explained in the Mishnah is that there were two partners that
One
owned the
guy.
slave. Oh wow. Thank you. Two partners owned the slave.
Doesn't
One
say
of
you can't split up a
them-
nefesh. It said you can't split a nefesh.
One of them freed the slaves, the other one didn't. So there's a problem over here
Because it was an odd number.
because the slave can't get married. To marry another slave, that was problematic. To marry a free person, that was problematic. So Beis Shammai
Still a girl, you're
said
talking about ever.
that you forced the second master to free. Beis Hillel then agrees to Beis Shammai. Okay.
I left my phone on there. I'm gonna go get it.
Okay, so it starts like this. Tan Rabbanu was taught in the Bryce, I'm a Shakra Chatzi Abdi. Someone, just move it over. Someone frees half his slave. Now, the Gemara is going to explain two possibilities here. Maybe he frees him with the document, maybe he frees him with money, whatever the case is. Let's start with the document.
Or he's the second hand.
No, now we're talking about only one owner.
Okay.
And he
fine.
says half of you is free. Rebbe Aimer doesn't say which half. Rebbe says Kana. Rebbe says that he's half free, which is very good. Chum like Kana. Chum say you did nothing. Chum say it doesn't work. I'm a Rabba. Rabba says that the Machlekes Rebbe and the Chachamim, Rebbe and the Rabbanan is bishtar when he used the document. The Rebbe Sava, Rebbe learned we're jumping back to the story of a Shifcha Charufa. This is a maidservant that was half free, marries a Jewish slave, not a non-Jewish slave, marries an Eved Ivri. Someone else comes along and has relations with her. She and him don't get the death penalty because she wasn't really a married woman because she was really half a slave. But she's not totally off the bat. She has to bring a sham shifta charufa. A sham shifta charufa. Certain asham, specific asham, special carbon. So the case was they have to lein of dasa. Free, she wasn't redeemed. She wasn't redeemed. And freedom was not given to her.
That happened by mistake.
Probably. So makish star lekesef. Because how do we get a star in here?
You started with
Because we said chupasa, her freedom was not given to her. So it goes like this. Ma kesef, just like when it comes to money, ben kule ben chetche, she could redeem herself, a slave could redeem herself halfway by paying half the money. So afshtarnami ben kule ben chetche, also when you use a document, you can go halfway. You can use a document. You say half of you is freed. Rabbanan Gemiri Lala Misha. The Gemara learned the Rabbanan learned from a woman getting divorced. Ma Isha Chetzilai, just like you can't divorce half a wife, you can't divorce her halfway. So Afevanami Chetzilai, also a slave, you can't divorce him, you can't emancipate him halfway.
Where they get rid of the wife, but she still cooks for them.
Aval Bekesef. But when it comes to money, so in other words, what Rabba says now is that when it comes to a star, when it comes to a document, there's a machlekes Rebbe and the Rabbanan. When it comes to money, everyone holds that it works. We're talking about freeing a half a slave. Money, you could free half a slave with money. She could buy herself free, or he could buy himself free. But when it comes to a document, it's a machlekes Rebbe and the Rabbanan. That's the Kalkana Peduya Vena Peduya, which means that they're going to be half redeemed, half not redeemed. That was the opinion of Rabba. Lema B'Hakim Iflagi. The Gemara says, let's say that the machlekes is the following. The Gemara says Akesha Adifa. Akesha means juxtaposition. It says right next to the redemption through money, it says the redemption through a document. So one says that you have to look at that comparison. Just like through money, you can do halfway. So with the document, you can do halfway. Marsav Gzeir Shava Adifa. The other one says, no, you're doing a Gzeir Shava, which is a verbal analogy. It says law, her, by the Shifka Charufa. It says law by a divorced woman. So we learn that just like a divorced woman is with a document, you can't divorce half a wife. And so too, you can't free half a slave with a full star. Yeah, with half a star of half the freedom. The Gemara says, that's not how it works. The Kuli Alma Gzeir Shava Adifa. Does it look like we had a conflict here between if you use a juxtaposition or if you're going to use a verbal analogy? The Gemara says, no, everyone holds that the verbal analogy is going to be stronger. Verbal analogy is like it's as if it says it in the pasuk. It's Gzeir Shava. Yeah, if someone wants to divorce his wife halfway, they'll get rid of the other half later. But so there's no such thing.
About, like a slave that we talked about, half Jewish, half not Jewish.
That's how it started.
But we learned beforehand that if you marry a slave, then it's an automatic conversion. No?
No, he would marry his own maidservant. So as we said that when he says Hariyat Mekudeshesli, there was an opinion that he meant that I'm making you Jewish.
Holy. Yeah.
So the Gemara says, really? Go ahead. Really, everyone says that a Gzeir Shava, the verbal analogy, is more significant than the juxtaposition. But here it's different, because you can ask a question on the verbal analogy. The question is, a woman doesn't even have the option of going out because of money. She doesn't buy herself free. But by a slave, he does go free. So therefore, the comparison, the verbal analogy,
can't get divorced only with a get.
She needs
to
get
money back and
right.
get out.
Right. So therefore, there is no even option to do this. So maybe
doing chetzi wasn't even a story.
Maybe by the slave it should work differently than by the woman. Okay, that was so far.
That
was the opinion. That's the other opinion that holds that we don't do the Gzeir Shava. Now, that was the opinion of Rabbah that says the whole machlekes here is regarding the document. Rabbi Yosef and Rabbah are friends, right? Rabbi Yosef, he learns differently. He says machlekes bekesef. The machlekes Rebbe and Rabbanan, if you can do half an emancipation, that's only regarding money. The Rebbe Savar have to learn if das Rebbe says you can do half. She's half redeemed and she's half not redeemed, or he is half redeemed. Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan hold dibitary question Adam. No, when it says veheftalei niftasa, redeemed, she is not redeemed. It doesn't mean that she is redeemed and she's not redeemed. It just means that she's totally not redeemed. Redeemed, she is not redeemed. That's a way that people would talk in Israel. One of my teachers used to talk like that. He would say, see if you can figure it out. Abaya says that Grama ben Azakan is pater. Abaya says. Who would say that?
A lot of people do that.
They finish off with the what's it called, chiastic, sort of like, comes back to tell you the first part again.
I told you not to do what I told you. That's
right.
how it happened.
Yeah.
It's like she loves me now. Loves me now.
Right, something like that. So that would mean that
No, he's
Dibra
talking
Torah-
about couple. No. He's saying a couple. He's saying the same
Dibra
thing.
Torah K'lashon B'nei Adam, that even though it says redeemed, she is not redeemed, that doesn't mean that she's halfway redeemed. That just means she's totally not redeemed. Aval b'shtar, but when it comes to a document, everyone would say it does not work. You cannot do according to Rabbi Yosef.
You can't do a
There's no such thing as a document
There-
doing half the
If
emancipation.
you say for a star there's half, it would be half the money from the star story.
No,
It would have been half the money. It would never be a half a star. It can't be.
no, it's not a half a star, but we'd make a star that says that you're halfway free.
Oh,
Meisvei, the Gemara has a question.
chetzi get. Yeah, it's cool. 6 lines. It's serious.
Mishacher chatzi abdi b'shtar. If someone redeems half the slave with a document, Rabbi Yomer Kana v'chamer lekana. We have exactly the Bryce, exactly the opposite of what Rabbi Yosef said. Rabbi Yosef says by a star, everyone agrees that it doesn't work. Comes along the Brysa, says that it's a machlekes. He frees half a slave with the document. Tiyufta de Rabbi Yosef, is this a question on Rabbi Yosef? Tiyufta, absolutely, it's a question on Rabbi Yosef. Gemara says, Neima, or maybe it leaves it out. B'shtaru de pligi. They're arguing about the document. But when it comes to money, they're not even arguing at all. Everyone would agree that money should work entirely. Rebbe and the Rabbanan would say that it works entirely, that it works halfway, that money should be able to.
Gracie's in trouble every way.
So, let's say it's a kasha and Rabbi Yosef in two ways. What does it mean in two ways? First of all, Rabbi Yosef said that they're not arguing about the document. We have a brisa that says they are arguing about the document. Rabbi Yosef says they are arguing about money. Brisa seems to say that they're not arguing about money regarding if it works with money, because Rabbi Yosef says they're arguing about the document, which means that about money, everyone says yes. Amalach Rabbi Yosef says no. You have a kasha on me only with one. I'll give in, you have one strong kasha on me, but the other one is not such a kasha. So it's pligi b'shtar u'adin b'kesef. They're actually arguing about both. I said they're arguing about money, and they are arguing about money. I said they're not arguing about a star, and you say they are, but okay, so that's one kasha. If they're arguing about money, if you can redeem half a slave with money, so why do you say the case was with the document? Machlokes with the document. The Rebbe is coming to tell me the strength of Rebbe, that even by a document, Rebbe says that it actually works. That you can redeem half a slave with a document that says half of you is redeemed. So why didn't you argue about money to show that it doesn't work with money and to show the stringency of the Rabbanan? When it says, no, we don't do that. It's better to show the power of leniency than the power of stringency. Anyone could be stringent, but to show that you can be lenient, that takes a lot of strength. And Rabbi Yossi is Rebbe rather. Rebbe is the one that's very lenient. So we wanted to show the power of Rebbe. Tashema, the hefta, she's redeemed. Yachal hakol, maybe she's entirely redeemed. In other words, what the Gemara here is doing, it's discussing what really was the case of the Shifra Charufa, of this maidservant that's married to a David Ivri, that's married to a Jewish slave. She has relations with another man outside that designation of the Jewish slave, right? She's designated, and then she doesn't get the death penalty. So she's redeemed. Yachal hakol. Maybe she's entirely redeemed. She's entirely Jewish.
Oh, you went back to the case with the
Shivcha Charufa. Pasuk says no, she's not redeemed. Maybe she's entirely not redeemed. Maybe she's a regular non-Jewish slave. It says she is redeemed. How does this? She redeemed, she's not redeemed. When it says peduya ve'ena peduya, she's redeemed, but she's not redeemed. That means she's halfway redeemed. Because of b'shav kesef, and this would work with money, because we use the word pidyon. Pidyon means redemption with money, or with monetary value. Mainly ela b'kesef. I would only know that this works with money. How do you know that you can do redemption with the document? Freedom was not given to her. That means that the document would have worked. So she could be redeemed partially with money, or she could be redeemed entirely with document, and she didn't use that. And later on it says, because of Sefer Krisis. It says that you write for her a bill of divorce. He's talking about a divorce. So it says law over here, it says law over there. Tells me that the document could be used. I would only know that you can use you can redeem her partially with money, or fully with money, or you can redeem her entirely with the document. How do you know that you can use a document to redeem her halfway? We do a juxtaposition, a comparison between the document to money. Just like when it comes to money, you can redeem her entirely or partially with money. Also, a document could be entirely or partially.
What halacha changes for half?
It's complicated if she's only half redeemed.
But only on the evidence.
Yeah. It's her whole life is b'diavad right now. It's halfway.
She's hanging in limbo.
She can't do anything, right? We understand the Rabbi Yosef Basar Yitzaysev was talking about after we asked the question on Rabbi Yosef, and we said, what does Rabbi Yosef hold? That there's a machlokes about the document, there's a machlokes about the shtar Hamani Rebbe. What we just came out with now is that there is an opinion here that holds that redemption could be halfway, whether it's money or with a document. Who holds that? According to Rabbi Yosef, that's the opinion of Rebbe. Rabbi Yosef said that they're arguing about both money and the document, if you could get a redemption halfway. Ella Rabba, but according to Rabba, that says that the machlekes is about a document. When it comes to money, everyone agrees that you can do a redemption halfway. Reisha Debrei Akal, when we're speaking about money, that's everyone agrees to that. Seifa, when it comes to the document, who holds that a document can go halfway? Can we do a half redemption? That's only Rebbe. So it turns out that the Reisha is unanimous, and the Seifa, which talks about the document, is only the opinion of Rebbe. So it's not symmetrical. Amalach Rabba says, you're right. Reisha Debrei Akal Seifa Rebbe. That's how it is. I'm sorry, it's not symmetrical. It's not as pretty as you'd like it to be, but that's the story. Ravashi says Rebbe. Ravashi says it's actually Rebbe. But what about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah said that we have a person that's half slave, half free. How does this work? Rabba says, Rabba says our Mishnah is talking about money. That how did they get half free? It's talking about that the redemption was done. I explained the Mishnah that there are two partners. Don't accept that yet. The Gemara is not following that. The Gemara thinks that there's only one owner. How does one owner redeem half a slave? How does he redeem halfway? It says, well, the redemption was done with money. So that's how he was half free. And everyone agrees that money works. But according to Rabbi Yosef, how will you have a half a slave, half freed and half not? According to Rabbi Yosef, it can only be the opinion of Rebbe. The Rabbanan don't hold that you can free a slave halfway, not with money and not with the document. Ravina says, we're talking about two partners, and each partner owns half the slave. They can redeem their entire portion. Everyone agrees to that. We were talking, the whole machlek, this whole amud was basically talking about when you have one owner redeeming half a slave. But when you have two owners, everyone agrees that each one can redeem can free half, right? Amar Rabba.
Is there a practical reason someone would do that?
1 second, I'm sorry.
Is there a practical reason an owner of a slave would choose to free half of her or him?
1 second, I can't hear.
Is
Is there a practical reason?
Is there a practical reason that an owner would choose to free half of his slave?
I don't know why he's freeing a slave at all. It's a halachic problem. He's not allowed to free a slave. Why is he freeing a slave? I don't know. But he doesn't want to free him all the way. He doesn't want to give him up.
Because they can apply for
But
a loan.
for some reason, he wants to free half of it.
What's the limitation of the law? The Gezerah Shava law and law?
We learn that just like a woman uses a document and it needs to be lishma, and there's certain laws about that document, and it can't be attached to the ground, etc. All of that.
Right.
We had a Gezerah Shav also that the document that the deed of manumission also needs to be document, needs to be written lishma, and it needs to, we'll have some other ones as well coming up.
The reason I'm asking is the big deal, one of the big deals of a get is a total cut between the ball and his wife.
Right.
But it seems that's not the case with the document of manumission.
Right. And the reason for that is because we have another redemption which comes through money.
Okay,
So
thank you.
that sort of like kicks in and makes it that it's not so simple. Yeah. Amar Rabba. Rabba says that this whole discussion, machlekes Rebbe and the Rabbanan about freeing a slave halfway with a document, with money, where everyone holds that it works, but with a document is the machlekes, according to Rabba. Machlekes b'sheshicher chetzer v'niyeh chetzer. That's because he's keeping half and he's freeing half. Abel shecher chetzer v'machar chetzer. But let's say he frees half and he sells the other half. So he's getting rid of the slave no matter what. There is a transfer of this entire slave. Part of it is going free and part of it is going to a different owner. Or instead of selling him, he gives him as a gift. Even the kanafik minikula, the fact is that there's a transfer of ownership entirely of the slave out of his possession. So Divrei Kalkana, everyone says that it works. That there is a full transfer here. We're gonna have to start over. Yitzi arrived.
Yitzi.
You want us to start from brachas?
It says not to have slaves. It just says no. It just says,
There's a problem.
don't
Yeah.
bother with slaves.
Go back to June 19th.
June, what's it called? Juneteenth.
Okay. Abel Sheikh, keeping the nothing. Kol Divra Kol Kana. Amali Abaya. Abaya says to Rabba. Abaya is a student of Rabba. Ubakulai like pligi.
The fact that it's a full sale, there's no argument.
There's no machlekes when the entire slave leaves him. There's a problem with what you're saying, with what Rab is saying. But we have one brayso that says, let's say someone gives all his possessions to two of his slaves. You two own everything that I own, which basically means that he's just given the ownership of these two slaves as well over to the two slaves, which means that one of them owns half of himself and owns half of the other slave because he's a partner now in the slave. Owning yourself means that you're free. Being owned by the other slave means that you're a slave. The other slave is owned half of himself
half
and
of
half the other one.
guy.
Okay, and the rule is
Two
kanu.
halves make a whole.
Kanu, they acquire the possessions, they acquire half of themselves, and they acquire each other. And then they acquire each other, and then they have to redeem each other. They have to redeem the other half. But we have another brisa. Someone says, all my possessions are given to so and so, my slaves. They did not acquire themselves. So 1 second, we have one brisa that says that you can give over the slave to two people. One is the slave and one is to someone else. The other one says you can't do that. So how would we explain a contradiction? How would we resolve the contradiction? You have two ways. Either you say that it's a machlokes, or you say that the situation is different. So the easier answer over here is to say that it's a machlokes. My love, harabi v'harabanan. So Rabba that told me there's no machlokes when there's a transfer of ownership that everyone says that it's going to work. I have two brises. The easiest answer that we can do for the two brises is to say it's a machlokes. Rabba was mistaken. Abaye is telling Rabba, you made a mistake. How are you going to resolve these two brises if you're not going to say that it's a machlokes? Loi, the Gemara says, Idi Rabbanan, everyone holds. Everyone says it's both of these brises are the Rabbanan. According to the Rabbanan, Rabba holds that it works, even according to the Rabbanan. So why does one brisa say that it doesn't work? Depends. Did he give him entirely, or did he give it half, or did he say half of you is acquired? So he says, what we're thinking right now is when he says chetzi, we're thinking that he said half of you belongs to you and half of you belongs to you. Now, what we're thinking now is not that he's giving half of him. He has two halves, right? If he would give half of him to himself and half of him, the other half to the other fellow, then that would be a full transfer. But we're thinking when he says half of you belongs to you and half of you belongs to the other guy, then what we're thinking now is that he's giving the same half.
Oh,
he's giving the same half, and it wasn't a real transfer. It wasn't a full transfer. You see, because he didn't say the other half. He just said half. Chetzi. He said half of you belongs to you and half of you belongs to you. But he didn't say the other half. Maybe you're just trying to give the same half twice. That's why we say that it doesn't work. No. He's giving him the full half. He's trying to give something that he gave already. The problem with saying that this is the answer, that one of them is he gave all of him over, and the other one is that he gave half of him over. The problem with saying this is that if you read further in the brisa that says that it doesn't work, it says that if he says half, it doesn't work. Michlal, that would imply the Reisha Damar Kulai. If the Seifa says that it's half, that means the Reisha was talking about entirely. You can't say the Reisha was talking about half, and then the Seifa talks about half. That's not going to, you can't, that's just redundant. Gemara explains, no, it's not. It's explaining what it said in the Reisha. It was elaborating. You didn't explain it in the Reisha. It says, He doesn't acquire himself. Why doesn't he acquire himself? Ketzad, why not? Because he said half. That's the sefer. Hachanam Mistabra, the Gemara says that it's also logical to say that it's explaining it, that both the Reisha and the Sefer are talking about when he said half. The Isal Kadaita Reisha Damakula, if you would say that the first half of the Bryce was talking about when he said you're entirely given over to yourself and the other slave, then Hashdamar Kulai, if he says entirely, like Kano, and it doesn't work, if he says half, sure it doesn't work. Why would you have to go say the obvious? It must be that the beginning was talking about chetzi, and the second one was just explaining that it's chetzi. Kumar says that is not a real proof. I get your answer, but the Hachinami Mistabra, to say that it's also logical to say this, because or else how do you explain it? I can explain it other ways. And that is, if that's your problem, I can redo this. It says in the Seifa, not to explain the Reisha, but not to elaborate on what the Reisha is saying, but it says the Seifa to be able to ascertain what the Reisha really meant. That you shouldn't say Reisha damar chatzi, that the Reisha was half. But if you would have said entirely you're given over, then it would work on a Seifa. Therefore, the Seifa says chatzi, mechlal, Reisha damar kulay. I had to say to be different. Right. I had to say chatzi to say that the Reisha was kulay. And it's coming to tell me, and even kulay doesn't work.
Which is a better answer.
Which is problematic for Rabbah, and that's what Abaya wanted to say, but it doesn't matter. All it's saying is that it's not a hachinami mistabra. I can still answer that one of them is kulay and one of them is chetzi. I can still say that that's the difference between the two brises, but you can't tell me hachinami mistabra that it's chetzi. Okay. Hachinami mistabra. This also is logical. You can't say that you're compelled to say it. Okay. I can answer the contradiction between the two brises. We're talking, the two brises said, one of them said, someone he gives all his possessions to two of his servants, they're free. They acquire the possessions and then they have to free each other. In other words, they each acquire half of themselves. The other brisa says that it doesn't work at all. So Rabbah said, not Rabbah didn't say, Abaya said that it's probably a machlekes, and that's why we have two brises. So Rabbah wants to say that no, there's no machlekes over here. Everyone says that it would work. So what do you do with that brisa? So it goes like this. The first answer was that it was chetzi. He didn't really give him the whole thing. He only gave him half. Like kasha, if you want, we can answer it differently. We can say kam b'shtar echad, kam b'shtei shares. Here, where it doesn't work, we're talking about there was one document. Now, this is very interesting. Someone mentioned this in the shir in the morning.
Or second one?
Where it went like this. Just like if someone has two wives, you can't divorce both of them with one get. Jonathan, it was you asked this. You can't write.
Can't be Makudish with one.
You can't.
You can't be Makudish with one.
With one.
With one anything. With one ring, that you can't be Makudish with.
I'm not sure.
You're gonna write it.
Maybe Makashavayali Yitzia. Yeah, you would say with this document, I'm acquiring both of you. You give it to a third party to acquire it on their behalf.
Open seat.
But by a get it for sure doesn't work. You can't say with this document I'm divorcing both of you. You can't. It doesn't work like that. But we learn from the pasuk law. Love Allah, love Allah chaverta. You cuss of law. You write it for her. You can't write it for her and her friend. You can only. Each one needs their own divorce document. Lucky them. Just like the site, right? So too, just like each one needs their own divorce document, so too each slave needs their own deed of manumission. So therefore, you can't divorce two women, with one document. You also can't free two slaves with one document. So why does it not work? Because it was one document. Conversation Sharas here is talking about two documents. There's a little caveat here that we didn't know about. Umar says, why did we're going back, we're thinking that the way we explained the brisa before was when he said half. because the Sefer said half. That was explaining the ratio. That was also, he said half of you is acquired. So if it's one document, then why does it have? Why does it have?
Cases half. Ratio and the Sefer half.
Why? Right. But why does it have to be one document? But if it's one document, why does it have to be half? One document doesn't work, even if it's all of you, all of you. If you want to the Gemara says Hachikama. This is what it means. We're not explaining the ratio is not explaining the Sefer. The Sefer is not explaining the ratio. They don't acquire themselves because it's one document. But if it would be two documents, they would acquire each other. But if you would have said half of you is acquired, then even by two documents it doesn't work. Basically, what we did was we added some words into the brisa, and then we made it fit. Another teretz. What's wrong?
The last one. The last
Well, all we said was, if it's one document and it doesn't work, so why do you have to say it doesn't work? Because you said chatzi, half of you is acquired to you, which we said that doesn't work, right? Why do you have to have another problem why it doesn't work? They said, no. What we meant to say was, if it's one document, it doesn't work. Now we add in some phrase. But if it's two documents, it would work. But when would it work? That's only if we said, if you said kule, but not chatzi. Okay. Another pshat is like kasha. There's no question. Kan bevasachas.
Oh, nice.
Here is when he freed them both at the same time, both slaves at the same time. Kan b'zeachazeh. Here he said, all of you is acquired. All of my possessions are acquired to you. And then he gives at a different time, all of my possessions are acquired to you. Bishleim abasra like Kani. The Gemara says, 1 second. What happens over there when he does a b'zeachazeh? We say it doesn't work. This one after the other. It doesn't work because it was already given over to the first one. Gemara says, but that's not exactly what you said. I understand why the second one can't acquire all the possessions because it was already acquired by the first owner. But the first owner, the first slave should acquire everything. We say that this last Ibayasema is not so good. Let's go with the first Ibayasemas, which we basically said with two documents, or we said it was chatzi. Okay. Ravashi says Shani Hasim to Kari Le'av. Ravashi says an interesting answer. If someone gives all his possessions to two of his slaves, we said that it works. If someone says, all my possessions are given to you, to so-and-so the slave and so-and-so the slave, we say it doesn't work. Ravashi says, you know why it doesn't work? Because he called him a slave. Called him a slave. That means that he's not really giving them his possessions. He's not really giving them freedom. So 1 second, the S word, right? Okay.
So what does he say? I divorced
so
you,
Amalei
woman?
Rafram
I'm
Ravashi.
divorcing my wife.
My ex-wife.
You don't say that.
Amalei Rafram Ravashi. Rafram says to Ravashi, the Dilma. Actually, by the wife, you actually say. I think you say the word wife. All right.
Even after the shliach got the package, it's still his wife.
Okay, Amalei Rafram Ravashi. Rafram says to Ravashi, you're making a problem because of this word. Dilma avadei shayu kvar. How do you know that the word avadai means that you're a slave now? Maybe it means that they used to be a slave. If someone writes all his possessions to a slave, the slave goes free. If he says that I'm leaving over some of the possessions, then we think just like he's leaving over some of the possessions of the land, he's also leaving some of the slave. He's not really freeing him. Reb Shimon says that really he is free if he says it like that, unless he says there's 1/10,000th of it that's not freed, then the slave is not freed. Why is he not freed? Because he said 1 of 10,000 is not freed. But if he doesn't say that, he would be free. Now the problem is, but he says I'm giving it to my slave. Use the word slave, and really he would be free. Talking about that he used to be a slave. The fact that he calls him a slave doesn't mean that he wants him to still be a slave. That's just the way he's referencing him. because
nickname,
he used to
like
be
a
a slave.
nickname.
He could just name him by his proper name. He wouldn't name him.
Why? They had numbers. I don't know.
If he's not a
You want to go further? You want to stop?
Well,
Go
you're
on, look,
doing
Dr.
great.
Sands, if he's
You can't
fired up,
stop.
Dr. Sands fired up, he wants
Did you
more.
finish the page?
No.
I'm up
Wants
to
more, he
Nug
wants more.
Nug Hushar, which is a brand new
Six
Dr.
sugya.
Sands wants
lines
more.
down.
At least see under the.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dr. Sands wants more.
Yeah,
Nug
that's
Hushar,
42.
if an
All night
ox,
long.
if an ox scores a slave that's half freed, okay? If you have a half freed slave and an ox comes along and gores it. Now, in order to understand this Gemara, you have to just know two halachas. You have to know two halachas. One
You have
is
to pay.
that when an ox scores a slave, there's a fine, they have to pay 30 silver coins. The owner of the ox has to pay 30 silver coins if he kills the slave. If an ox scores a free person and he kills him, then he has to pay the value of, it's machlekes, but let's say the value of the person that was killed, value of the victim. So he scores the slave that's half free. Well, the Gemara says like this: Yom Shel Rabbi. If it was the day that he worked for the master, then you pay the rabbi. Yom Shel Atzmai. If it's a day that he was free, then it's Latzmai. Then you just gets his value. Who does it go to? He's dead. It goes to the right. It goes to the inheritors. The Gemara says, "Elamiyata Yom Shel Rabbi used to shifta Yom Shel Atzmai used to baschein. Let him have two wives. Why do you make such a big deal that he can't get married if each day is a different? He has a different identity. There's two identities, right? So on the day that he belongs to the master, he marries a slave. On the day that he's free, he marries a free person. Sounds like interesting. The Gemara says, "Isura like kamrinan." That we're not talking about isurim. We're talking about monetary things. You could divide it up like that. When it comes to ritual law, that you can't say that he's half like this. Tashema, come in here. Hey, Mr. Hey, Miss Me, Ben Khairin. If an ox kills someone, an ox that was a muad, kills someone that's half slave, half a Ben Khairin, you give half of the fine to the master, which is 30, half of 30 is 15. And half of his value to the inheritors. Amai, why do you do that? Why don't we just say, like we said before, over here it's talking about death. I'm sorry, I didn't explain the last case properly. The last case was talking about where it wasn't death, it was just injured. So therefore, it was just an injury. That we can say the slave is still there. It depends who was the master that day. But once there's no slave left, then you can't divide it up like that. There's like a merging of ownership, and over here it all becomes this one vague thing. You can't say that it is divided up by the day. So what's the case where you said Nug Chushar that it depends on the day? We're talking about that he hit him on his hand and it dried up. He couldn't work, but it's going to come back. According to Abaya, that says that you can pay Sheves Gedola means that you pay the damages. Sheves Ketana means that you pay the loss of work. You understand?
So if it's the day that he was supposed to work, you pay it to
Right.
the rabbi.
But according to Rabba, that says that you only get the loss of work, you don't pay the nezek. It's a little bit of a problem. When do you have these 5 things that are used in the payment? Nezek, tzar, shevet, shripa, boishes, 5 types of payments for damages. That's only when a man damages another man, not when an ox damages. When ox damages, you only pay for damages. You don't pay for loss of work. So how are you going to explain this? If you're talking about an ox,
If you're talking about
gores,
the injury, how could you going to say
you're not going to be able to say that you have the sheves. One pshat is that it was hit by a man. We're not talking about hit by an ox. You can say that this is just a statement of Amiraim, and you're asking a question on Rava. Rava doesn't have to hold like every other Amira. Rava's an Amira himself. He doesn't have to hold like that. Let's leave it over here.
Why? Keep going.
Yeah, we're on a roll.
On a roll, man.
You're not
Momentum.
You're not allowed to go ahead.